Fiscal Bureau Director Bob Lang looked under every seat cushion, looked under every desk. He almost dug up all the carpets in the Capitol, but he found no new money to run state government through June 1 of 2017. So it's a great week for a Capitol Roundtable, thanks to Shawn Johnson of Wisconsin Public Radio, Patrick Marley of the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, and Bob Hague, News Director of the Wisconsin Radio Network. Did those legislative leaders really think there'd be, like Hintz's term, pot of gold, 200, 300 million?
We don't know what's in their minds. I mean, we know what they said. And they've been saying for a long time that essentially the budget hadn't gotten started until these new revenue estimates came out. And they had a list of things they were going to likely correct once the revenue numbers came out. I mean, the week that the governor delivered his budget, he was talking about when these new numbers come out. And I think you could even go back to the campaign when every sign was pointing toward a budget deficit in this coming biennium, and the governor was saying, no, if we have better revenues than have been projected, it'll be okay. So it's been a long time that they've been building them up.
But it was only 3 weeks ago that the governor said, correct me if I'm wrong, there'll be a little bit more money, and now there's no more money. So are we seeing a bad trend here, Patrick?
Well, I mean, Shawn's right that from the outset they were saying that there was going to be all of this money, hundreds of millions of dollars, they thought. But the governor did sort of reset expectations 3 weeks ago when he said, well, we're going to get some more money, not maybe as much as we'd expected earlier. I do think that they were surprised that the number was zero. They had diminished expectations, thought maybe they'd get, I don't know, 50 million, 100 million, but to get a zero, I don't think they were seeing that coming.
But if you read Bob Lang's memo carefully, he's saying that any uppers by June 30 might be erased by a softening in the 2 out years. Well, what's the biggest victim of no new revenue, Bob? Casualties.
Biggest casualties probably got to be UW's system. The cut remains in place. I don't think there's any diminished expectations in terms of the size of this cut now going forward. So I would say UW, hands down, is the big loser here.
But help me understand. The governor said, I'm still going to push for autonomy. The first one to say no was Nygren and Knutson. Then last week, Patrick, I think it was your story, Nygren and Darling said autonomy's dead. Then within 24 hours, the governor said, I still want to discuss it. Who do we believe?
Did anybody hear him say that I'm going to push hard for this? I heard him say I'm going to talk to the legislative leaders about it. I didn't hear anything that rose to the level of I'm going to push very hard for this. Now, maybe I just didn't hear the right quote.
Whatever he does, he's not going to get it. That's clear. They might be able to. Both Darling and Nygren said they were still looking for some flexibilities, so they're going to do something. Maybe ease procurement rules, maybe change some of the building standards, but they're not going to get full-on autonomy. It'd be a separate authority. That's passed.
Okay.
I think it's about framing the budget at this point, because I mean the way that he presented the UW budget was, I'm taking this $300 cut away from you, but I'm giving you something in return. You take away the thing that he's giving, and now you're just left with that cut. It's just a harder sell to the public, so he can talk about it at this point.
Which is the rhetoric of Act 10, wasn't it, Shawn? I'm going to take away collective bargaining, but you will have new, starts with a T, tools. Tools. Okay, but then where are they going to get the 127 to make up the cut in school aids? $106 million had been a tax credit payment that they were going to pay in the next budget. Oops, let's push that out to the 17-19 budget. And now $15 million they just found by turning down the Confluence project in Eau Claire. Where else are they going to get some of that?
Well, I mean, once they take care of the $106 million move, you're most of the way there. Finding the remaining $19 million, like you said, you've got the Confluence project. They're nickel and diming things as they go through the budget, getting $1 million here, $500,000 there. They'll be able to come up with that $127 million. But it does undercut something that Republicans have talked about since they took power in 2011, is getting us in line with the gap deficit, no more accounting tricks. This move they're making is at odds with the rhetoric of the last 4 years.
No more gimmicks.
Except when you're backed into a corner.
Except when you're backed into a corner. Okay. Anything else looming large where in places they can save money either in the current fiscal year or the second year of the biennium? Because they have another school aid funding problem the second year, right? 127 gets you more money the first year of the biennium, but it doesn't. Does it guarantee you any more money the second?
It puts you even. It essentially keeps school spending at current levels for the next 2 years. Okay. They want to find an upper for that second year, so I don't know how much more they're talking about that there, but they'd have to find something.
Okay.
I believe there's been some suggestion of maybe pushing off some more transportation projects. Obviously not anything major, but...
Transportation. The governor and Fitzgerald say no gas tax increase. So that's not going to happen.
And Voss has said that too. Now, he told the Transportation Development Association that there are not the votes in the Assembly to do that, and that he doesn't think it's the right time for that. So gas tax is not happening.
Okay, but legislative leaders are saying, watch the registration fee. We're quietly trying to build support for that. Do you look for that to happen, raising the $75 that we all pay for our vehicles?
If the governor's out there saying, I won't support that, do you think they really want to take that vote, have it on their records, only to have it vetoed out, potentially?
Yes.
I just don't think so.
Yes, because I'm going to say yes. I'm going to
Okay.
disagree with you because I think the option is they're so uncomfortable with that $1.3 billion bonding level that they're willing to say, we won't raise the gas tax, but hey, what about some increase on the registration fee? Am I wrong?
Well, you're right about the level of discomfort on the level of bonding. I mean, no, I think that's the legislature stepping up and saying, you know, here's an option to this. You don't want to raise the gas tax, fine, but this deserves a serious.
Boy, they got to think twice about that though, because the governor has said it's tantamount to a tax increase. He's running for president. If they gave him that and he were able to veto it, he gets national attention and a bunch of acclaim from conservatives. And then, as Shawn said, all these Republican legislators are on record for a 33% or higher registration fee increase that didn't even end up helping the transportation fund. The Democrats can eat their lunch with that. So I think it's very politically risky for them, given the governor's stance at this moment.
You're with Shawn that they're not going to raise the registration fee.
Not unless they broker some kind of deal with Governor Walker.
Well, then are they going to prune back the highway projects in everybody's district? Wow.
I think they could delay them. You know, have your cake and eat it too. We're still going to do these. We're just not going to do it now. Kind of like what they did with the Confluence project. So we still value this project. We're just not going to pay for it right now. You can still do this in the future, but we're not paying for it in this budget. I think you could see the same thing with roads.
But those funding partners for that Eau Claire project may not be there in 2 years. Bob, how do you vote? Are the $75, $75 are going to go up? Do you side with them? Do you side with me?
I'm going to side with you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
but there'll be some
I'll
increase?
stick my neck out here. There'll be some increase.
Okay. How big? 1/3, $25? No. Too high?
No.
That raises $116
Between
million.
10 and 15.
Between 10 and 15?
Yeah.
You still have if you do that, you still have a big transportation problem. It's $1.3 billion in bonding. They want to get that down to $1 billion. If they do the $25, I think they get $200 million. So
it's 232.
Okay, so they'd still be bonding more than they did last time. It'd be still a record amount, and they want to bring that down. So if you do $10, it's
not going to be
a small amount.
And you're right. It's closer to $200 million, Patrick, because you don't start that increase until October of this fall. So
right.
It's not 232.
Let me ask this: Can they reduce the bonding by delaying some projects, pushing some projects
Probably.
back? Yeah.
Yes. But what did we hear last week? 40% of our major the funding is now going to the Zoo Freeway. 40%.
Well,
wow.
That's going to be if they get to a point where they have to delay things, because that looks like one of the options they're going to be looking at is, are they going to delay things all over the state and leave the zoo alone, which the governor has promised they won't delay the zoo? Well, that's going to get a lot of out-state legislators from both parties upset.
Yes.
Well, because everyone has said across the state, we understand how important the zoo is to the state's economy. But if you're talking about delaying projects in people's backyards or one district over and the zoo goes untouched, I think that's going to be hard for some to swallow.
And the Stillwater Bridge is going to be built. We have to come up with a match. It might even be, I don't know how much it is. But you can delay widening the interstate between Madison and Illinois. That's something you can push out. Okay. Any other thoughts on transportation budget? It's okay. It's 2-2 on whether the registration fee is going to go up. This prevailing wage drama I find so intriguing. Fitzgerald said, I went to senators one-on-one and got support for right to work, but I'm not going door to door on prevailing wage. What are your thoughts on that? How does this play out?
You know, in that same presser where he said, I haven't done the footwork on this.
This great chuckle.
The chuckle.
Snort, snort, snort.
The first question his response was, well, what prevailing wage repeal?
Yeah.
Somebody asked, how's the prevailing wage repeal going? And he said, what prevailing wage repeal? And then the chuckle.
But then Nass goes ahead with
Right.
a day-long public hearing,
Right.
and he gets beat 3-2. It's unusual for a committee chair to lose,
is.
but I'm sorry, Bob. Finish.
Well, so, I mean, I think most of the drama has played out already, but there could be more to come. I guess that depends on what sort of heart-to-heart conversation takes place between the majority leader and Senator Nass.
Do you look for the Nass compromise, which would abolish prevailing wage on what, local projects, and keep it at the higher threshold for the state? Do you look for that to be added to the...
couldn't get the vote of Howard Markline, who sits on Joint Finance, and I think you have to look at him as a bellwether on this issue. That I don't know that Howard Markline has said no to some kind of reform, but clearly that was too much for him. So, but at the same time, Nass is saying, well, if we do reform in name only, it's not going to get my support, and I'm worried that we're trying to fool the taxpayers with some kind of trussed-up version of prevailing wage reform. So I think it's a tough issue. I think we'll see some kind of change in the budget, but what it looks like, I don't know.
Where's Speaker Voss on prevailing wage? I mean, what has he said? Are there votes for it in his caucus? 63 of them?
Hey, well, he said they don't have the votes, right?
Right.
Which,
That kind of started
to
this
repeal.
whole
For repeal.
to repeal.
Full repeal,
which is noteworthy given the size of their majority there. Some conservatives have actually questioned that. When you have 63 seats, you can't find a majority to repeal. But if you want to keep 63 seats, maybe you just don't want to push the issue. I think this is probably, there's some type of compromise that gets put in the budget, I think is the most likely option. More dramatic option might be Senator Nass says, the heck with it, let's do a pulling motion on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it could happen.
Mm-hmm.
You look at it, it's been a while. It's been a while since we've had one of those that actually succeeds, but every now and then it
gas
happens.
tax indexing.
Gas
And-
tax indexing, exactly.
Well, and the new Senator Stroh will put out a press release then said prevailing wage is not dead. We all saw that, right?
Right.
Nass issued a press release after he got beat on 2 committee votes. It's not dead. It's up to leadership. Stroh will follow it a few hours later. So this is just pretty
There's
amazing
2,
drama.
and there's 19 of Senate Republicans. So,
True.
so
That's
you
true.
know, they need a lot more votes if they want to push a full repeal through.
Patrick, you perhaps of the 4 of us have been covering the court. Abramson's, she's due back in court arguing for the Chief Justice job back,
That's right.
but she's lost now 2 initial rulings.
Correct.
So what do you think might play out here?
Well, I mean, I think we're probably weeks or maybe a couple months away from a decision, though the federal judge is moving in this pretty quickly. He's basically kept his powder dry until he gets to the merits of the issue. But I think his earlier ruling shows she's got a tough road to persuade him that she is still the Chief Justice, that she needs to have that job until 2019 because this constitutional amendment can't go into effect until there's a vacancy, is her argument.
Well, has anybody heard of any changes that the new Chief Justice, Pat Roggensack, has implemented since she's been there a few days?
She was on public television on Friday. She said that she's gone to all of the key personnel and talked to them, that she's trying to create a more consensus-based court. She said that in the past, all reporting had to go through the Chief Justice. She wants to have staff feel comfortable going to any member of the court, and that it doesn't all have to be through the chief.
Is that a sign that we might see a healthier, less dysfunctional court, Patrick?
Way too early to tell, in my opinion.
Way too early to tell.
You know, the conservatives feel that this is the path to collegiality. Obviously, Abrahamson and Crooks and Bradley think that this vote was held in a way that shouldn't have been done, that it was premature. And so with 4 members of the court feeling you're on the right path and 3 feeling totally sidelined, how is that different than any place in the last few years?
Okay. APS is on the court. It's a wonderful issue. It's another drama. I heard you on the radio today talking about our park system, Mr. Hague.
Mm-hmm.
Joint Finance made what decision?
They made a decision to increase fees, user fees for
Yes.
parks, access fees, if you will,
Electricity
camping permits,
fees, camping,
oh,
yeah.
a whole package across the board. Your day admission to the parks, your annual sticker, everything, your camping fee, those are going to get bumped. And of course, they went along with the governor's proposal to not put any general purpose revenue into the park system. So the thinking is, I'm trying to remember the precise verbiage here. The motion was put together by Senator Markline, who said it's a market-based approach. Okay. So in other words, the users of our parks and trails are going to be shouldering some of a good deal of the burden moving forward to keep them solvent.
Shawn, would we be the only state where parks would have to be self-sufficient, supposedly?
I believe we would. I mean, if you read the Fiscal Bureau paper, they didn't cite any other state that was totally self-sufficient, and they said they actually quoted from an NCS, National Conference of State Legislatures study that said that it just doesn't happen. Parks haven't been able to do this, and they didn't do it this year, but there's been this talk floated of, well, we could have corporate naming rights for the parks.
Yeah.
Fiscal Bureau paper looked at a couple states that do that, California and Virginia, I believe. And even those states receive some support from their general fund. So typically states have a mix, which suggests that in Wisconsin, we'll be coming back in a couple years and either revisiting this decision or raising those fees a little bit more.
Well, Rep. Taylor and Senator Erpenbach said, how about a motion that we couldn't see Culver's Devil's Lake State Park? Now, I lost it. I just wasn't following it. Did that motion pass?
That motion to ban corporate naming rights for parks, that motion failed. So it's not going to happen in this budget, but I think it could definitely happen in the next budget. I mean, Secretary Kathy Stepp had every opportunity to kind of poo-poo that when she's testified before the committee, and she didn't.
She kind of said we haven't considered that yet, right? Which means we might eventually?
She said we're open to all options, was I think the gist of her comments. So it's not happening now, but I think you have to look at it as an option in the future. Other states do it. If you don't have any tax funding, you got to find options somewhere.
Okay. Well, that's fascinating. We have a governor, Governor Shalom, if you're in Israel. The impact of him, is there any direct impact of the governor traveling so much, laying the groundwork to run for president and to develop more expertise in foreign affairs? He's been gone a lot. Patrick, impact in the capital?
Well, there can be. We'll see. I don't know that the wheels have fallen off, but if they have a major difference on the state budget, that's going to be a problem. For instance, we talked about transportation before. Yeah. If you're right and I'm wrong, and that the lawmakers dig in their feet and say we're going to pass a registration fee increase, we're going to override a veto if it happens. If there's some major fight over UW funding or some other, or voucher schools would be a good place where it's been sort of quiet, school accountability. There's a lot of issues that could come up that if he's gone too much, it leaves a little bit of a power vacuum for legislators to assert more authority in the state.
Anybody else on that issue, Shawn? What's your read of the governor gone so much? Is he paying a price for it in the budget?
I think you look at some of the big issues that are still kind of hanging out there, and there just doesn't seem to be a lot of movement on them right now. And part of the way you get movement on a big issue is you get the governor in the room. I think I don't want to pass judgment on that till you look at the final product of the budget. But you have seen in the finance process, they've been okay going against the governor on some issues.
Like the DNR and Ag Board, he didn't get his way on that.
Yeah, I mean the system authority was
Confluence Project, $15 million. It was the governor that went up pre-election and promised Eau Claire $15 million. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, that's fine. Just recently, and I know he kind of walked it back, but funding for these police investigations, this new law that he signed last session, he didn't fund it. They did. Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, I think you could come up with a list of the smaller things, many of them, but something like the UW System Authority, they were very clear. They were bucking him on that, and that was one of his big kind of crown jewels of the budget.
Bob, you've been watching finances, we all have. When the Democrats beat up the governor traveling so much, is that effective, or are they overstating it when they bring it up every 10 minutes?
Well, I wondered that myself when they put forward a motion a couple of weeks ago to request that the campaign cover all of his expenses,
including the trooper security,
the troopers and everything. Co-chair Representative Nygren referred to that as political theater. The very next day, the campaign put out a statement, the Walker presidential campaign, that they would be covering those expenses. That hasn't stopped the Democrats on joint finance from continually harping on the issue.
Yeah, but
to what effect, once you get out of the echo chamber on the fourth floor, I think the effect dissipates pretty quickly.
what do you guys think?
I mean, I think it's a definite strategy of the Democrats to use this issue over and over to erode support among independents for the governor in Wisconsin and say, hey, you just reelected him and he immediately started running for president. I think they see that as a weakness, and it's sort of a sustained message that any opportunity they're going to mention it to us.
Okay. So he gets back on Thursday. The GOP convention is Saturday in La Crosse. I think a few of us have to cover it. What should we look for at that convention? John, what are your thoughts?
From the governor specifically?
No, from the general tenor up there.
I don't think.
You know how it works. You parade.
Yeah, I do.
The governor's a keynoter. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you parade the congressional delegation. But go ahead.
Yeah.
What are you going to be looking for?
Yeah, I think on a state level, if you're looking for interesting statements about Wisconsin state policy, I think it's going to be pretty boring.
Okay.
I don't expect the governor to say anything big at the state GOP convention. He's got a lot of other forums where he would do that now. I think the theme will probably be, we got to stop Hillary Clinton. You know, third term of Barack Obama. You'll hear that a lot, is my hunch.
What do you think we'll hear from Senator Ron Johnson?
Well, I think that's the person that we really want to watch. He's got this competitive election coming up in 2 years. He's, you know, that Marquette poll show, he's got some work to do, so I think he's going to be trying to work the crowd and give his message. I'm not sure exactly what it'll be.
Okay. And you don't get to go, Mr. Hague.
I don't get to go. No, I'm very disappointed.
Very disappointed. Okay. The one issue that, as joint finance, will be making major budget finishing decisions the next 3 weeks. The one issue they're going to most closely watch, Bob?
Transportation.
Transportation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You and I expect registration fees to
Well, I mean, if we believe that the UW is a done deal, spending cuts in place, no public authority, then transportation is the next big one.
Patrick?
I agree transportation is the thing I'll be watching most, though I do think they'll drum up some more money somewhere for UW. I think they're looking at a $300 million cut. It may only be $10 or $20 million that they bring that down, but I think they'll want to be able to say we did a little bit better than the governor could.
Okay. Okay. John?
I mean, what is the most interesting
Yes.
to me at this point is the Bucks decision. I mean, I think it's becoming sort of a lose proposition.
Go ahead.
Well,
why?
I mean, look at what they're saying. I mean, the state governor and legislative leaders are saying we need the city and the county to kick in more. You know, they could find this money for a streetcar. They ought to be able to find it for an arena. But if you look at the property for the arena is tax exempt, so you can't do a TIF like they did for the streetcar. So that's sort of a red herring, right? You're kind of setting the city up to be the fall guy if this thing goes bad. But then you look at the state's position and these lawmakers. I mean, that Marquette poll showed that people don't really want to borrow state money for a Milwaukee Bucks arena. And so, you know, it's not like they're in a great position either. I mean, they're being asked to do something that's politically unpopular. So what's the one thing that they're not asking to do? They're not asking the owners to pay more, because they're already, with the new owners, along with Herb Cole, they're paying 50% of the cost.
$250 million.
Yeah, and they're saying correctly that is actually high compared to other states. But just take a step back and look at sort of what we're talking about here. These guys are billionaires. They're going to profit from this arena. They're going to get wealthier. And they're kind of we're supposed to thank them for kicking in half.
And that's what I call one of these common denominator issues. Taxpayers out there understand public aid for the Milwaukee Bucks, most of whom will never see a game there. But my question for you...
I mean, I'm sort of surprised it survived as long and as well as it has, given what you just said. I mean, that Marquette poll was stunning. It was 80% opposed. I mean, there are very few issues where you get that sort of bipartisan agreement of opposition to something.
But then MMAC came out with its own poll.
Yes,
So I understand.
right.
And now there's a debate.
If you can educate everybody and tell them all the facts, then you get better support for
Yes.
it. Well, I'm telling you, the 30-second ad against the Bucks Arena targeting a legislator is going to explain its position very well. The 30-second ad saying, no, that was a good choice, is maybe they're going to need to buy a 60-second spot. You know what I mean? It's hard. You got a bumper sticker to be opposed to the Bucks Arena. You got a white paper to be for it. It's hard politically. It's just a tough issue.
Sure.
And if you look at the governor's position on this, he said, we're going to bond $220 million.
He was in for 220 job tax.
His argument is, we need to do this because we're going to lose money if the Bucks leave. It's not, to use
And
sort
we're
of
still going to own an arena with deferred maintenance of $100 million.
To use a sports metaphor, right? Okay, he's playing not to lose.
Okay.
Which every couch potato sports fan knows. When you do that, you get in trouble, right? And it's not like a fan doesn't enjoy that. Well, I doubt your average voter enjoys that. But you're playing not to lose.
Hours after Bob Lang said no new money, the governor said, well, boy, we got to put this Bucks deal on the back burner here. What signal was the governor sending with that?
I was surprised by that because he's been consistently committed to it, and he has had good support from Voss and Fitzgerald on it. And they've been having these meetings with the city and county. Democrats have not been criticizing this Bucks deal.
Right.
There's some who want it. So I was a little surprised.
Senator Harris Dodd put out a statement supporting it. Excuse me.
Right. So I was a little surprised that he was saying we're pushing that to the back burner for the moment.
Okay. Fascinating. Well, that's great. That's Cap Roundtable. I want to thank Shawn, Patrick, and Bob. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.